Hi everyone, I'm here on day 10 for real. I'm redoing it today because of course the lives didn't work yesterday and I had a plan and I'm going to fulfill that plan even if it is a day late thanks to Facebook. But anyway, I was just excited to share something even more intriguing potentially than the other things I've shared before, although the mirroring is pretty intriguing. But I have something totally different today. So today is just kind of fun. I'm not talking about the horses or any of that kind of stuff. Just something that is marvelously fascinating. So, have you ever thought about why we say things like, let me digest that, when you give me new information, for instance? Or, I feel like I'm hitting my head on a brick wall. Or, knock me down with a feather. Do you know why we would say that? All cultures have sayings like this. And we describe our internal states in terms of movement. So right now out in the world, there's this notion that life is about up here. It's about what you think and how you think. And if you get your thinking right, everything else happens. And I have a very different opinion about that. Our thinking greatly affects our being. You know, it's very, very integrated to our being. But fundamentally, we are a being of movement. We are about physical movement. And the brain is there, our mind is there, our conscious mind is there to aid in that, to make it better, to enable us to overcome more resistance and move more through life. So our mind is there supporting this being that is moving through life and moving energy. It is not our being with a hindering body in the way. It is an aid to our being. And on a gut level, we know this because that's how we describe how we feel. It's how we describe our inner states as movement. And life is movement. In fact, Adrian Bejan, who discovered the constructal law and has written a brilliant book, Design in Nature, about the constructal law, defines life beautifully, I think, not in terms of biology, but in terms of basically physics, that life is movement with the freedom to change. And the second half of it is very critical, of course. So the more freely that we're able to move, the more we are living, quite literally. And we move or not based on predictions of energy that we're going to feel. So when you say things like, it's like hitting your head on a brick wall, it's as if you were going to, if you're going to take that action, that's how it would feel like. You would feel, if you're at the edge of a cliff and looking over, you would feel falling and maybe not do that. You're predicting what that would be like. You're not actually falling, but you feel the falling. You feel the prediction of that. So this is enormously fascinating. More than I can say in a few minutes. But let me back up a little bit. I didn't discover all this myself. I wish I could say I did. I was on the track to it. And that's how I found the people that have been discovering this. But they're light years ahead of me. So I have to give credit where credit is due. But I started kind of understanding this and then did a search online and found someone named Kevin Behan, the dog trainer that I have mentioned numerous times now because he's so fascinating. And he has something called the immediate moment theory, which I'm not going to tell you what all it is right now, but it's movement based. And he developed that working with rehabilitating highly aggressive dogs. But his immediate moment theory is really how we operate in our subconscious. Outside of our mind, that's how our being operates. And his work has since been highly corroborated by Adrian Bejan with the constructal law and Lisa Barrett in How Emotions Are Made. Fascinating book if you're interested in this kind of thing. That completely debunks most everything that everyone's teaching out there. So anyway, to my knowledge, I'm really the first one that's openly applying this to humans, and not that other people haven't made the connections between what Kevin is doing, but I think I'm the first one to step out and try and teach it. Not try, but teach it. So anyway, that's just a little background. So I didn't figure this all out on my own, but I am, kind of serving as the interpreter of it and bringing it to you, plus bringing my own discoveries that I've had with my horse and in nature and everything else. So that's the whole mix. Anyway, when we encounter a stimulus, I know people don't like that word, but a stimulus is anything that has emotional relevance, which is almost anything that we encounter. A chair in our way has emotional relevance because it's in our way, or a chair that we need has emotional relevance because we need it. And, a glass of water, a human being, an idea, anything that we encounter, for the most part, has some level of emotional relevance. And when we encounter that, we make a prediction about, we make a prediction about what it would be like to move, to incorporate that into our movement, which is life, to incorporate it into life. And we have a desire to incorporate resistance all the time, because if we can't, we stop moving and then we're heading towards death. So we want to incorporate resistance. We have a natural desire for that. And there is an equation. This is my work now. In a three-part equation that determines that prediction. It determines one of four outcomes. You're going to either feel stress or fear or drive or flow in all the colors that they come, right? One of the colors of stress is dragging my feet or hitting my head on a brick wall, right? Those aren't fear, those are stress. They're certainly not drive and they're not flow, but they're some of the colors, some of the ways that stress shows up as a feeling in our body. And if you think about, like, I'm dragging my feet, that feeling, if you think about when you would normally say that, it would be like people that have some significance in your life, so you either like them and respect them, or they're your boss, or they have some authority over you, are telling you to do something. But your past experiences in your body are telling you it's really not a good thing to do. So your head is wanting to go with them. Your head is literally moving ahead of your core and your feet. So it feels energetically in your body like you're dragging your feet. Even if you're not actually walking, just the simulation of that your brain is constantly doing, feels like dragging your feet. So I'm just going to pique your interest here. Obviously, this is a massive topic that we could talk about for weeks. But I wanted to just open up your eyes to it. It's a whole new world when you start seeing it in this way. So if you start listening to conversations and listening to yourself, you'll hear these phrases. They're not something we say once a week, right? They come up all day long. All day long. Let me chew on that a little bit. Let's see. It turned my stomach. I feel like I'm carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders, right? These are things that just come up in conversations all the time. So, and the equation that leads to all the colors of the stress or fear or drive or flow is, I said this in one other video, but if you haven't seen it, or just to reiterate, because you probably didn't catch it all the first time, it's a big topic. It's your relative grounding and suppleness. And now that makes more sense than the first time that I said it. So your relative grounding and suppleness in relation to whatever you're encountering, because life is about movement, plus the emotional relevance to you. How much, I'm not going to go there, but there's stress is tied to emotional relevance, and it's not all negative like you think, not at all. But anyway, the emotional relevance plus the stakes. How high are the stakes? So your relative grounding and suppleness plus emotional relevance plus stakes. Those three things combine and they lead to one of four results: stress or fear or drive or flow. I want to go on and on and on because I love this so much. Okay. I'm just going to say one more thing. I'm at risk of throwing out way too much, like, because I've already done that. I'm just going to throw out one more thing because I so want to. So flow, when we're in a state of flow, we don't really notice our body. It's so integrated. The movement is so perfect. We're so able to incorporate resistance into our movement that we don't even really have an awareness of it because there's nothing stopping it. There's nothing jarring it. And we tend to say it's like being on cloud nine. It's like walking on air. I mean, afterwards, we would describe it that way, right? When we're in it, we don't even notice that. But afterwards, we would say, oh, it was like being on cloud nine, like walking on air. It feels very light. I'll skip over stress and drive and talk about fear. So I would say stress and drive are opposites. Stress is stuckness, and drive is, you have what it takes to move. And fear and flow are opposites. And in both cases, we lose our awareness of our body. In the case of flow, it's because our body is, like I said, so in sync with everything that the awareness usually comes when there's a jarring, a stopping, or something like that. So you don't have an awareness of it because there is none of that. It's just flow. Fear happens only when you've lost your sense of self in relation to other. So you no longer know where your being is in relation to other, and it feels like falling. So fear and flow. One, you're walking on air, and the other is you're falling. And that's a big clue how to deal with fear. And we all have fear. I have fear. Even though I teach this, I have fears that are difficult for me to deal with. But I know how, and I work my way through them. And you would not believe the change in my person from even 5 years ago. But we forever have fears. They're never done. It's just a continuum that never ends. So every single human being on earth, no matter how highly developed they are, has fears that they're struggling with. But when we look at fear within the context of that equation, we have three variables to work on: our relative grounding and suppleness, emotional relevance, and stakes. And I'm going to let you in on a secret. The relative grounding and suppleness is the single biggest key. Because emotional relevance and stakes, a lot of times you don't even have control over. And they just don't have the power in the equation. They don't have the weight in the equation for many, many reasons. Because life is about movement. So they don't have the weight of your relative grounding and suppleness. And I always add suppleness because if you're strong, protected, you can be knocked down, you're stiff. You can't incorporate things into your movement. Incorporation requires suppleness. It's the ability to go this way or that way or up or down. You have to have the suppleness. So relative grounding and suppleness vastly increases your capacity to encounter things before you flip into fear. That's what the continuum is. We're always just pushing out the threshold at which we flip into fear. And this is obviously phenomenally important for all of life. right? Anything that you do in life is affected by this. Every movement you make, whether or not you eat, whether or not you drink, whether or not you talk to someone, whether or not you take on a challenge of any type, everything you do is affected by this, because our mind is like 10% and the other 90% is this stuff. It's the constant energetic feeling. I call this the forces we feel, that we're feeling all the time about everything. So on the one hand, this is just life in general. It's about everything. But I love, love, love to apply this to the realm of emotional beauty. So the realm of, and that's a lot of things, but for me, the pinnacle of that is growth in another being. The moment that they flip out of stress, just out of stress and into flow. That moment of transition, that moment of growth is just one of the most beautiful things in the world. And that is what teachers and leaders of various types help us to do. Great teachers and great leaders. A lot of people do it occasionally, right? But the greats can do it with almost everyone when they intend to do it. And understanding the forces we feel, the energetics that I just described, makes it infinitely more doable for you and I and other people to learn how to do that great work. The beautiful work, the work of emotional beauty, the work of helping others to grow. Because we can understand, if you didn't just have a knack for it, you can, if you have enough desire, because it takes a heart of courage to do this work. That's what we've been talking about over much of the 10 days. But if you have enough desire to do what it takes to build that heart of courage, and you get some training in that, if the desire is there, then you can absolutely learn to do this work. It makes it teachable. It makes it learnable. Plus, it's just so freaking fascinating. I mean, who would not want to know how they work? But you can understand how you as a teacher or as a leader show up. You can start feeling what are the forces I'm feeling and how can I work with that equation to make me more able to encounter things. And you can look at my students and clients, what do they bring up in me? They're the stimulus that I'm encountering. I'm encountering a million stimuluses, but in this context, that's the primary stimulus, is my student or client. And you can learn how to be far more grounded to be able to handle, A, more of their stress, and B, more of their greatness. Because their greatness or their potential from greatness can knock us down as much as their stress. And in both cases, we hinder them if we get knocked down instead of help them. So you can understand yourself, plus you can understand your student or your client. You can see energetically what's going on with them. And you don't even need to know their story. Like Andrew's talking about. You don't even need to know their story. You just have to be in touch with, some authentic part of them. You have to be able to see that and connect with it. And you can help them when you understand all this. So I just wanted to open a tiny little window into a whole new, bright, beautiful, fantastically fascinating, amazing world that no one is talking about, that I think everyone should know. And when you learn to understand this stuff and you learn to do it, you apply it, you build your heart of courage so you can work in the realm of emotional beauty. You go from underappreciated to moving others to tears. And that is the most beautiful work in the world. And that's what I help people to do. I hope that got you curious about life, movement, and my work. Thank you.